Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you are listening to this latest episode for the Hormone Cafe. My name's Mary Taylor. I am your menopause and menstruality mentor, taking you from frazzled to fabulous. And I'm so excited because today I have the wonderful Rachel Turner Wellness, who is a health and emotions wellbeing coach, and somebody who has become, I hope, a dear friend, but also somebody that both myself and my partner have worked with, as well as a number of my clients. And the reason I wanted to speak to Rachel was because gut health has been coming up quite a lot, particularly for women going through perimenopause and menopause, and definitely quite often we hear about the importance of looking after our gut health to support our hormonal well-being. And so when I was thinking about, well, who would I like to invite? Obviously, Rachel was top of the list because I know that you also work with a lot of people supporting them with their gut health as well. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Maybe just a few words from you, Rachel, about the amazing work that you do and a bit of your backstory even.
Oh, thank you for having me on. Yeah, it's great to be here. So my backstory in terms of health was I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that affects the gut, colitis it's called. It's part of the inflammatory bowel disease. It's under that umbrella. And that was back in 2004 and I was in my 20s. And I rumbled on with that for years. By the time I was about 40, it had come round again. It was getting just too much for me to cope with my career, so I had to stop. And that's where I'd already made a lot of changes to my life, but that's when I trained in functional medicine health coaching, and then I became obsessed with the effects of our mental and emotional health and our stress on our physical body, because for me that was the biggest turning point for me recovering my health. And that's what I see with all my clients. But it also, I know I'm 46 now, and I can now reflect on my gut health issues and what I was doing when I was young in terms of the pill and other stuff, which I know impacted my gut health into developing that disease, as well as the emotional and the stress side. So it's, it's this interconnectedness, isn't it, of everything. So I help people internationally, globally, with their mental and emotional health through everything that I've learned for myself and through all the qualifications I've got.
Yeah, and as I know, as I said, I know for myself, in my household, and certainly from some of my clients as well, they absolutely rave about the way that you've been able to support them. And it's really interesting what you were saying about that, sort of the impact of stress on your body, because I was listening to a podcast this morning and even talking about the impact of stress on prolapse and our uterus and womb, and how that affects. And I was that made my ears prick up as someone who offers some of the work that I do. Again, that connection that we're not making between stress and, obviously, what's your definition of stress, Rach?
What's my definition of stress? It's such a massive one, because stress is so many different things, isn't it? My old thinking of stress would be that it's a feeling, it's a pressure.
Yeah.
The definition of stress is just anything that's really putting your body into some kind of a chronic state of fight or flight, which could be a food you're eating, a person you're hanging out with, your boss, your career, your environment, your foods, your past, your thoughts, your beliefs about yourself. Oh my God. That's a really great question, and I'm not entirely sure how to answer it.
And the main reason I ask it is because, again, in the work that I do, I'll listen to a person, and I know that you work with men as well as women. So if I'm listening to a person and I might say, oh, and what's your stress levels like? And they'll be like, oh, I'm not stressed. And you kind of sit back and go, they've probably shared that whole list of things that so I really wanted to make that point at the start, because for many people, when they're thinking, well, how does stress relate to my gut health? Well, I'm not stressed. You know, even being busy, doing all the things you love, you stress.
That's it. You know, that's it. People don't recognize what stress feels like because it's normal to feel stressed.
Mm.
It's so normal in our society that you're rewarded for it. You know, the productivity, how much can you get done? The doing. We're human, you know, it's like that phrase, isn't it? We're human beings, not human doings.
Yeah.
But we have been programmed into thinking we must always be doing something, to the point where, and especially women, I find, can't sit down. And if they do think they're sitting down and taking a rest, their brain isn't. They're planning, they're sorting, they're organizing, they're beating themselves up, they're feeling guilty about something else, they're going backwards, they're going forwards. We are not. That's probably why, you know, your clients say, well, I'm not stressed, because stress is normal.
Yeah. So through all your studies and your qualifications, what did you learn about that the layperson would find really useful about the link between stress and gut health?
So more
In a
broadly,
nutshell.
more broadly speaking, this stat would probably, anyone that's watching this, you might have heard it, but it will make you sit up. 95%, at least 95% of disease is caused by stress. So if you look at it on that big scale, 95%, your cancers, your autoimmune diseases, your asthmas, your all of this stuff, diabetes, a lot of it, stress related. In terms of gut health, stress has been proven to increase gut permeability. Gut permeability is leaky gut. We have this lining within the gut. It's called the tight junctions, and stress, the hormone, the stress hormones, cortisol being one of them, in the body can cause permeability of that surface area. And once you get that permeability, bigger morsels of food pass through into your bloodstream, which shouldn't normally be there, and then cause your body to react against these foods. And that increases inflammation, the onset of disease, allergies, intolerances, all largely coming back to stress. Now, stress isn't just the hormones. That could just be the stress of certain foods you're eating that your body just can't really digest well. So that I'm appreciating that there are other stresses that can be physical, but in terms of gut health and stress, gut permeability and increase in inflammation.
So how does that link to colitis, for example? Is it the same, or is that something different? Is it still gut permeability, or is that something else?
I would suggest that anybody that has sort of Crohn's or colitis or anything under that umbrella of inflammatory bowel disease will most likely have some level of gut permeability. But everybody is entirely different, which is why there is no golden bullet. Everyone's looking for that magic pill or 100% guaranteed treatment. And of course there isn't, because we're all so unique. And I feel that is because when we get sick, or if we're menopausal and having some issues with that, some kind of symptoms, it's not going to be a black and white situation, because we haven't got to this point in our life without bringing all of life's experiences with us, and all of our learnings and beliefs and upsets and stresses. We still hold them, and they are definitely playing a part in whatever it is someone is presenting with physically.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's really important to recognize that, you know, as we're moving through perimenopause and menopause and our estrogen levels are dropping, you know, that's having a cascade effect on the rest of our sort of hormonal and enzymatic activities. And that's why all of a sudden, you know, people might be thinking, well, you know, I was fine with this before, and, you know, now I can't cope with that. You know, it's also why things that stressors that we used to be able to manage, we're no longer able to do. Our sleep might go out of the window because of those dropping levels of hormones as well. And then all of a sudden, as we know, low sleep, that we're looking at more inflammation in the body, and, you know, we're running on adrenaline and so on and so forth. So it's this almost like this perfect storm sometimes, isn't it? We're not aware. So what was it that brought you back to a place of health and well-being?
I came at it from all different angles. First was diet, supplementation, taking out a lot of things such as gluten, dairy, soy, going a lot more organic, just because then it was again a less stress on my body in terms of pesticides that were on the foods and in the foods. And also knowing that, the source of that food, say it's meat, I'm not eating their stress and they're upset because they're, raised more in a healthier conditions. But it wasn't really until I addressed stress, mental health, emotional health, how I felt about the world around me, how I felt about myself, how I addressed the career that I'd been in for 20 years. For me, that was, and I do say this a lot, it was kind of like the glue that made everything else stick. And I mean, some of you that are listening, if you think about it, are there times, certainly with a lot of the clients, with all the clients I work with, they can be doing what they think is the right stuff for them nutrition wise, but if they're going through a bad patch in life, falling out with their partner, having a lot of stress with work, kids leaving home, whatever it might be, suddenly they're still not feeling great. And it's because there are other factors, mental and emotional, that's interfering with all of the great lifestyle habits that they're into. So that's why for me, I had to come at it from every angle, really, in order for everything else to work. And there are times where things slip, and that's okay, because we are always learning and evolving, aren't we? And it's unrealistic to think that we're going to be, up and stay that way forever. But it's about taking those dips and learning and being resilient and coming back from it as quick as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So when someone's working with you, have you got a particular, because I know that you've been running recently, because you're always doing sort of like a short course or a group session for IBD and things like that. If someone was coming and working with you, do you do the nutrition? Do you do the whole thing, or do you focus, because obviously you're a health and you really focus on health and emotions. Do you focus more on the emotional side of it and sort of say, the nutrition we can touch on, or how does that work?
Yeah. So I offer kind of two ways of supporting people. I would say that currently a majority of clients that come to me want to focus on the stress and the mental and the emotional work. Normally because they've got to the point where they have tried everything else and they know they are missing something, or it's not getting them anywhere. If people want to work with me on a much bigger scale, then they can work with me where I incorporate everything. So it's the functional medicine health coaching. Now, functional medicine is it's not modern healthcare. It's looking at somebody holistically, and holistically just means the interconnectedness of all things, knowing that what we eat is going to change how we feel, how we look, how we move, and our health. So we can work around all lifestyle factors, all areas of life, using that coaching model. In terms of nutrition, I don't tell people what to eat. I do not tell people what supplements to take, because it is outside of any health coach's remit to do that. And I say that so that people, if they are looking for a health coach, to be very aware of that. We are not insured to do that, but we can educate and advise. People can take the education. It's up to them what they want to do with it. But a health coach can still help people make an awful lot of nutritional changes, but the client is always the boss, and they make the decision about what they want to try. And then it's up to them if they want to go and engage directly with a nutritionist. Now, I am very hot on this because I do work with a lot of people with inflammatory bowel disease, and they can be in almost a life and death situation. So they do need to be working with a nutritionist who is highly, highly qualified in that area. But general lifestyle changes, nutritional changes can all be done through education and goal setting, which is always based on what the client wants to do, which is empowering. And that's what I'm all about. It's about empowering the client to know that they actually know what they need. We are our own experts. Nobody's going to save us, and nobody's our hero. We have got it within us, and it's about partnering with people such as you, Mary, that help people understand that and help them understand that they do have everything they need within them, all the health, all the support, all of the resilience, and all of the knowledge. It isn't going to come from outside.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting what you said about, it almost comes down to, doesn't it, like, within reason, we all know what we should and shouldn't be eating. Obviously, there's nuances based on everyone's bio-individuality and uniqueness. So I can fully appreciate, and I'm quite sure there's people listening who are thinking, you know, but I'm eating all of my green vegetables and I'm doing this and I'm moving like that and I'm doing that. And I think this has been part of my own journey, which is probably why we have gravitated and come together in such a way, was all of a sudden appreciating the impact of the emotional and the mental baggage and stressors that I was carrying, because I just got to a point in my life where I could not outrun them.
That is a great way of putting it. It catches up.
I couldn't outrun them, and I couldn't green juice my way through them. So tell us a little bit again about how our emotional and mental baggage may be impacting on our gut health.
So if we look at it from a chemical perspective, when we have a thought, and we're having hundreds of thousands of those a day, we create a feeling, and that can happen within a fraction of a millisecond. As we create that feeling or emotion, the matching chemistry is made within the body. Starting off in the brain, the signals are sent to the body to create the chemistry that matches the feeling. So the feeling of love is going to be dopamine, all this lovely stuff. The feeling of stress is going to be noradrenaline, cortisol, all this kind of stuff. That chemistry then washes through the body. All of this stuff happens in a mere moment. And our cells respond to what is washing through our body. So looking at it from an environment perspective, we're sitting here having a chat, having a nice time. But if you're somebody that's quite stressed and you're sitting at your desk and you're stressing about something that you're imagining, and it's not even happening, but you're imagining it, your brain thinks it's real. It creates the chemistry that reacts to that fear or worry. That is your environment. You are thinking about this issue. That environment is then replicated down into your bloodstream through this negative chemistry. And your cells look to their environment, which is your bloodstream, because they can't see the outside world, and say, how do we behave right now? And they will behave according to the feeling you've just put through your body. So if it's stress or anxiety, depression, anger, it's not going to regenerate your cells. It's going to keep it in a holding pattern, because your body thinks, well, this is survival mode, so I'm not going to be doing any regenerating. I'm getting ready to run away. And that is where most people spend a lot of their time, purely based on what they're thinking about. Flip that. You're watching a movie, you love it, you're smiling, it's giving you a lovely feeling in your heart, you're with people that you love. That is what you're then putting into your brain, creating the feeling of, and then creating the chemistry of. Your cells then look and say, how are we behaving? Oh, okay. And that is where you regenerate, you increase health, and have, all the good stuff happens. So this is happening every moment of the day. When you take more control over your emotional and mental state with resiliency and intelligence, using various different methods, you have more of an ability in any given moment to help support your cells by the chemistry you're creating in your brain. And in terms of your gut health, it's the same deal. If you're in a state of stress and anxiety and worry, all of that chemistry is happening. The cells are not going to be regenerating and healing. And your gut, the blood supply moves away from your gut and your torso and into your limbs for you to run away. So there is no proper digestion, and there is no proper healthy balanced support going on in this section of your body, because it's getting ready to run, and it is in your arms and your legs, fighting or running. So that affects your gut.
That's that's really interesting, because as you're speaking, you know, one of the things I think some of us have is problems absorbing nutrients.
Yeah,
Would that then also be because of
because
exactly
that
what
would
you've just said
yeah,
there, that inability to absorb,
yeah,
because all the action takers are out here ready
yeah,
to fight the saber-toothed
yeah.
tiger
That could
rather
be
than
that. Yeah,
mm,
that could be one of the major factors.
yeah.
People eat on the run, they eat stressed, or it's the only time of the day they might sit down briefly, and then they're not paying attention to their food, they're worrying or thinking about the next thing.
Yeah.
Even that is a stress on the body.
Mm,
But yeah, nutrient absorption is highly impacted by stress.
okay. That, yeah, so that, you know, again, that just for me is, you know, we always find a little takeaway. And I think the other thing to be aware of for people listening is when we're talking about emotions, I mean, you've sort of given some top ones, but also I think we need to be aware of things like shame and guilt
Yeah,
and resentment and some of these other, you know, and again, for a lot of women, there's an awful amount of guilt around sitting still or resting or having support, because we're meant to do it all, or our mothers did it all, or, you know, all of
yeah.
those things coming in. So what, obviously I know that you work with everybody individually, but what's your sort of top tip? Because fundamentally what I'm hearing from all of this is we need, you know, let's, as I keep saying, let's make rest a revolution. You know, I'm here, as for those of you, I'm just going to throw it out there because I'm finding it so fascinating. You know, Rachel and I've had conversations about human design, and in my human design, I'm a projector. I am here for the rest-based living. I mean, my mum used to have to wake me up to feed me as a baby. You know, it was written in the stars right from the start. And again, this whole concept of, you know, even just like taking time to eat a meal, but how do we bring, I call it the meerkat mum mode. How do we bring somebody? What's your sort of top techniques for bringing someone out of this into a much calmer state where their body's going to be more receptive to, you know, to digestion and the motility? Because I'm sure there's a link there to constipation or
Yeah,
diarrhea and
yeah. Well, constipation is holding on. This need to hold it all together and keep it all in and not let go. And I think that's sums up a lot of women, you know, myself included in the past. So so if you're watching this and you want to take a step into supporting your gut health at this stage, my quickest tip would be, when you're going to eat, firstly, no screens, because if you're watching the TV, likely it's going to be something negative that's going to cause you stress, even if you don't realize it. If you're looking at your phone, you're not then paying attention to the food. Have your meal, look at it first. Don't just start wading into it thinking I've got to get this down me as quick as possible. Look at the food and take 1 minute, put one hand over your heart or both, look at the food, breathe slowly. And as you're breathing, imagine your breath passing in and out of your heart. And that is going to be 5 or 6 slow breaths, is 1 minute. And in that time, you create a coherent connection between your heart and your brain, which we haven't got time to go into, but is phenomenal for health. It also gives your body a chance to understand that you are about to take on a meal. So it's sending signals to your stomach to get ready to digest the food. It's almost like a form of grace, isn't it, and gratitude, because you're now looking at the food and you're taking that moment before you start, chewing on it. And also using this technique, which is step 1 of something called heart math, which is what I use with all my clients. You increase the secretory IgA, which is the mucosal lining of the gut. So within 1 minute of this, once you get into this coherent state, 1 minute will start it off. You get that nice feeling of, it's a relaxed shift when you get there. You're already supporting the lining of your gut before you start eating. So that is probably one of the most simple and powerful options. They've got other tips like using EFT, which is something that I use with all my clients, and that's what I'm known for the most.
So what's
But this,
EFT for people
so,
who, yeah.
so that is tapping, emotional freedom technique. And as we start tapping on these points, we send electrical signals to the midbrain and it turns off the stress response.
Right.
Without doing anything else. There's all sorts of phrasing, there's all sorts of kinds of stuff you can do with it. But just starting off with this is going to turn off the stress response and allow your body to go into a rest and digest state.
Yeah.
The opposite of fight and flight.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting. One of the things I've noticed for myself is quite often if I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed, I'll just start tapping this area here.
Because that's where your thymus is, isn't it? And that's the seat of your, your immune system. Your killer T cells are produced here, and that gets smaller as we get older. That's normal. And what you're naturally doing, so your body just knows. As you do this, you stimulate the production of your killer T cells, which supports your immune system. It's also known as the bravery point.
Ooh.
Gives you more courage. So when you're teaching children about these sort of points, they beat their chest like a gorilla.
Yeah. Oh, that
helps them feel brave. So, but there's this gland in here called the thymus gland, and then you give yourself a good old thump on there for a minute or two, and that can do wonders as well.
I'm loving this because I got triggered this morning by something, and it's made me go, and now I'm just like, so again, this is the beauty, isn't it? So next time I'm feeling like less than or a little bit worthy, or come on, get back in your warrioress, I can just give this
give that a thump.
Yeah.
And also, this is your heart space.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is where using heart math as one of those methods, this is where you can really connect with who you are. So much intelligence is sitting within our heart, but we're disconnected from it in this modern world. We think we've got to do everything with our heads. But when we take ourselves into the heart, like we just did with that simple technique that I was suggesting with the breath, the information that then can come up from your heart to your brain, which your brain is not paying attention to previously, can bring focus, clarity, a sense of calm and ease, empowerment, the list goes on. So it's interesting that you are connecting with this space, and I think it's more than just the thymus. I think for you as well, it's bringing you back into your heart, who you really are. And maybe that's one way for you to almost make a concerted effort to connect to that part of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, that's so simple, isn't it, for somebody whilst they're preparing their food or getting ready, because again, we're all looking to make this as simple as possible as mentors and coaches, because what we don't want is to be giving people all these huge tasks. And I really do recommend working with Rachel, because I find it I have to almost come out of my wonder, because as I'm talking and Rachel was talking about phrases, all of a sudden she'll start saying things back to you, and I'm just so in awe of like, how have you just translated my gibbery goop into something coherent and affirmation? But you can get to a point, can't you, where you're just tapping. It's this side, isn't it?
Yeah.
But even that, for me, that now you've added a little extra to that, that's really powerful for me. Just be able to do that. And you can be in a meeting, and I know you can even use heart math in a meeting. If you're finding you're in a meeting at work and it's getting a little bit stressful, no one's going to think anything of you. We cross our arms in meetings, or we hold, or whatever. Do you have to put the hand, or can you no?
So I just direct clients to do that for the first few times to help them understand where they're imagining the breath going. But once you've done it a few times in a non-stressful situation and you've practiced it, you can then, eyes open, hands relaxed, just imagine your breath. Allow your breath to slow, and then just imagine it passing in and out of your heart, and then you create this magical coherence, which on scans is amazing. And then no one knows you're doing it.
Yeah.
and you can actually take control of the situation you're in, because it impacts your heart's energy field that moves out 6 feet from your body, and anybody within that distance of you, you're picking up on theirs and they're picking up on yours. And if you're sitting there being coherent, I bet you no one else is. So you are like top trumps with your emotional intelligence at that point, and then the people around you want to be the same, and their hearts start to come into coherence with your own. So it's like saying to someone, calm down, but without saying calm down, because you are doing it. You are sitting strong in your own heart's energy field using heart math, and then the people around come into coherence with you after a few minutes or so in general. So you can actually observe the changes in other people, or children, or teenagers, whoever it is. You can just observe the change in their conversation or their temper or their emotion, purely on how you are using your heart energy.
I was just thinking as you were talking about all the mums I used to work with the hangry bedtimes or the hangry bath times, or just the distress over meal times, just to be able to amazing.
If I'd have had this stuff back then with my 2 boys, they're 14 and 16, I would have been a very different mother. Many situations could have played out very differently had I have had all of this stuff that I now support my clients with. Because the power comes from us as the woman. And when we start to take care of ourselves and prioritize ourselves and realize that it is not selfish is actually just knowing oneself and prioritizing oneself. You cannot help anyone else until you help yourself. And then actually you can't help them feel any better. That's their job. So again, that's not selfish. If they're choosing to be a certain way around you, that is their lookout. When we take our power back, and I think this is what, women our age are going through, and this is why it can feel so difficult. We've got to let go of this stuff that we've grown up learning, all these beliefs that we took on before we were 7, we can't even remember. That's most of your subconscious mind. That is playing a part in your gut health and everything else. We have got to let this stuff go, and that is why it can feel really rocky, because we are becoming new women. We are becoming who we have always meant to be, but we couldn't do it earlier, because now is our time, because we've got the wisdom and the experience to do it.
Amen, sister. I don't need to say anything else at all, because absolutely. And the other thing, I will say one thing, and other people won't like it, so that's when we need to get into our warrioress.
You let that go as well, because that's their stuff, not ours.
And just know that this is, the latest, this is the new, as I always call, the evolving version, the latest update, latest, like your iPhone. We always buy the latest iPhone or update. So how about we're allowed to update and have new functions, new features, new ways of being. So amazing. Thank you so much. I will put all of the links to how to connect with you under the video in the group. And I really do hope, because Rachel does offer a no obligation, call and check in, or if you're already feeling that, that say, cool, hell yeah, I need to work with this person. This is exactly the bit that's missing. Because I think the key is for so long, we look at our IBS or IBD, Crohn's and go, it's just about the food. And it is about so much.
So much
more.
Any of you, if you just got any questions or any feedback, anything, just get in touch. We are stronger together. Just keep asking the questions, keep being curious to anything that's out there, because that is where your power is going to come from. And my messages and emails are always open.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for gifting us your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I look forward to seeing you in person again very soon. Thank you. Oh, all my love. Take care.
Thank you.